So tonight I want to do a video about the brand new SOG Telus multi-tool and talk about the offerings from Gerber and from Leatherman that are comparable. Now that's where it gets dicey. It's really easy to pull out Gerber's new Spark, their Stakeout Spark multi-tool. It's geared as an outdoor multi-tool, but what do we get from Leatherman? Now this is $74. This is $74. But Leatherman, when I go and I look on their website, these are the tools that they recommend for camping. If you look under, I think it's labeled camp. So for tools around camp, they talk about the Skeletal. This is, the one they were talking about was around $89, $90. The Signal, which is $140, and then the $250 Arc. Well, all these are more expensive. And most people would say, well, you have to compare the Signal, but it is twice the price essentially as both the tools. So I will probably compare these two tools against the Skeletal. And I think that way, when we think about the price difference, they stack up a little bit more favorably against the Skeletal, although probably a lot of people will still end up preferring the Leatherman. So we need to do a little refresher course on the SOG Telus multi-tool. For those of you who have not seen or have forgotten, this one right here does have essentially these pliers that a lot of people talked about. These are specifically designed for camping. Yes, that's true to a point, but SOG also says it's for industrial use and essentially around the house. But they did mention something about picking up pots from the campfire, and that this was ideal for that. So it does seem outdoor themed, although it does have this 1/4 inch driver on the back. It does not come with bits. You would have to buy that separately or use your own. I do like the orange accents, but some of you have already picked up on the thumb stud on the saw will limit its functionality. I do know that a lot of people like thumb studs. It should be fairly easy, I would think, to take off the saw, but then of course it'd be a little bit harder to deploy. It's up to you what you guys do if you buy this. Now, it does come with a much nicer knife than a lot of the other SOGs. That was SOG's weak point on their power access, and they have remedied it with this tool. Very cool. Can opener, the Phillips screwdriver, the large or the medium flat screwdriver, and the bottle opener on this side. Now, the springs are a little bit hard to get to. You have to open it on this side, and then the tools are internal on this side. You have outside tools on this side, internal on this side, a little different. You have a large flat screwdriver, I think. Then they label this one right here as the chisel. To me, it seems more like a screwdriver. This is your awl. And then the set of scissors, that if you watch my original video, these actually work fairly good. I was pretty impressed with that. That is the tool set of the SOG Telus. Now, for those of you who have forgotten the Gerber Stakeout Spark, it does have the pliers. And then on this side, there is the giant hook. Now, just like SOG talks about having these pliers to take the things off a campfire, Gerber looks at it a little different way, or their engineers did rather. And if I can ever get this, there we go. They say to use this. Well, this is actually for pulling out tent stakes, but you could also use this if it has a handle to get this like a pot off a campfire. So Gerber seems to be worried about tent stakes. SOG seems to be worried about things over a fire. Both of these, they have fairly large instruments, different designs to handle different camping things. You do have a shorter saw. Now, I am curious, let's see, comparing these. Yeah, so these aren't that far apart. And the knife, we've already talked about the pliers, bottle opener right here, the clip, and then you have the ferro rod that goes in there. With the Tellus, the ferro rod is kept in your sheath. It is not attached to to the tool itself. Now, I do think I'll get some hate for comparing the signal to this, but I don't think it's fair to compare a $74 tool to a $140 tool. I just don't think that's a fair comparison to SOG or Gerber. I mean, if they made a $150 tool, hopefully it'd be a lot better. I should say it would be. Hopefully it would be. All right. So we'll go ahead, just for the premise of the price, we'll go ahead and use the skeletal. This has a great set of pliers. It has the clip. This will also have bottle opener and the clip right there. Has the pocket clip, the screwdriver, an extra screwdriver sits in the handle. And when we close this, it has the knife right there. Pretty cool. So that will be the skeletal. And I actually love my skeletals. I think these are a great tool. And even though they are minimal, actually, I think these do make pretty good camping tools. So when we look at the SOG Telus, all the tools I have extended are extra tools that the Gerber Stakeout Spark and the Leatherman Skeletal do not have. So for instance, there's the Phillips screwdriver. There is this medium flat screwdriver. There's a can opener. I think that's a huge miss for Gerber. A lot of people, if you want a camping multi-tool, if anyone's going to use a can opener, it's probably going to be camping related, although I know a lot of you have said that's an everyday thing. Now with the scissors, that's another thing. I really like to have scissors, and SOG actually has a good pair, so that's pretty cool. This micro screwdriver I think could come in handy, or chisel, whatever you call it. The file, and then on the end is a ferro rod striker. And I'll go back to Gerber. It does have a ferro rod striker and what they call an awl on it. But this file, that will be extra. And then the large screwdriver. Yeah, so all those are extra tools. So as much as the SOG Telus, maybe I wish it could have been a little bit better. I do appreciate SOG adding all these tools that are absent from both the skeletal, which is the closest thing price-wise, and what Leatherman says is a camping tool. Some of you might say, well, what about a rebar, and what about some of the other tools? But this is what Leatherman describes as a camping tool. So I'm using their website. So yeah, these are all extra tools from these other ones that SOG has. Now, as far as screwdrivers, I'm sure some of you would say, yeah, but SOG, or not SOG, but the skeletal has a screwdriver, and it does have a couple, but that is their bit driver. And SOG actually has all those screwdrivers and an extra bit driver. So that's what I'm saying. The SOG Telus actually has extra screwdrivers. I know they won't be important for a lot of people camping, but if you do have a breakdown with equipment, machinery, have to replace a screw out in the wild, that could potentially be important to have screwdrivers. All right, let's move on. And with the saw and the knife. Now I want to talk about knife blade steel because I think that's very important. That's where the Leatherman will really probably come out as more of a winner. But let's go ahead and talk about the saws. I already showed the SOG and the Gerber. Now the SOG seems to have just a little bit of a larger saw, but the Gerber has what they consider an awl right there and a ferro rod striker, but what they don't have is that thumb stud, where as in with the SOG, you probably need to take that off if you want to use the full extent of this saw. Now with the ferro rod striker on the SOG, I guess it's right there. I used it on the side. It worked great the other day, but potentially it is on the end. And then with Gerber, it is right there on the side of the saw. Well, before I get too far into this video, these are fairly comparable in price. As I mentioned, the skeletal that I'm using right now, I think is somewhere around the $80 to $90 range, and these are around $74. So this will probably be one of the closest price comparisons to a Leatherman I can find. But let's look at weight. Now, this is where SOG, those extra tools, come into play. Whereas in the Gerber Stakeout Spark is only 5.4 ounces, we find that the SOG is 6.8 ounces, or an ounce and a little bit over. And then the skeletal right here. Now, Leatherman says it comes in at 5 ounces, but right there it comes in 5.2. So very close. Now, the SOG is considerably heavier than these, but it does have those extra tools. Now, I think I've already talked about the ferro rod. The SOG is the clear winner. The skeletal has no ferro rod. SOG has a huge ferro rod, but it's not on board. You have to keep it in the pouch. I do like that the Gerber Stakeout Spark has it on the tool. So if you leave the pouch somewhere, as long as you leave this on your tool, you still have it. And this one is, yeah, considerably smaller. Very, very small compared to the huge one that SOG gives you. Now, when it comes to pliers, I think the Gerber Stakeout Spark is the loser. This is the SOG Telus. These pliers look a lot beefier than Gerber's. And then the skeletal, it looks fairly beefy, but even the SOG pliers looks a little bit thicker. I don't know. I talked about the scraping on the spring. If this was a Leatherman, I would say it's far superior, but because it's a SOG, I don't know. It looks like they're beefier, but who knows in reality. I do think the shape of the pliers might make it more useful for tasks in the outdoors. Now, I ran across something interesting with the SOG Telus. This is something I missed in my full review. The knife blade is actually advertised as a little bit more upgraded, and SOG does do this with a lot of their tools. The normal, this is 440C. So this is, I guess some people say it's a little bit comparable to D2 or a knife steel that used to be premium but really isn't anymore. Whereas in the Leatherman, the skeletal uses 154 cm, and then Gerber uses pretty much basic 5CR15 MOV, or maybe a little bit worse than basic. So while SOG does have a nice blade, the Leatherman will come out ahead a little bit with its 154 cm knife blade. So that will be a big win for Leatherman, because I think a knife for a lot of people is very essential for outdoor activities, especially. That's one of the key tools you want in your multi-tool. So I feel like this is sort of a hard comparison, but the Leatherman skeletal essentially wins in 3 areas: weight, the knife blade, and then reliability. I think those are 3 very crucial areas which make it a great tool to take on a camping trip, backpacking trip. I think it is one of the great tools for the outdoors because of that. Now, when it comes to judging between the SOG and the Gerber, I feel like it doesn't have hardly anything to offer over the SOG. The pliers aren't necessarily better. The knife isn't better. The saw, I guess, might be better because it doesn't have a thumb stud, but then if you take the thumb stud off, the SOG has a longer saw blade. The SOG has a longer ferro rod. The SOG doesn't have this hook, but then essentially you can make the argument that these pliers would work as tent stake pullers as well. So yeah, I feel like the Gerber really offers the least amount of value in this category. Some people would say it has more tools than the Leatherman, but I'm not sure if that makes it really the winner to hardly anyone. I do think for someone just wanting a quick tool to take on a camping trip, it works, it's adequate, and it's fine. I do like that it's a lightweight tool, but I don't think it really comes in the winner. Now on paper, the SOG Telus actually comes in the winner, which I think is shocking because I was very frustrated with several aspects of it, but I do think it ends up to be a fairly competent tool if everything holds up and works right. Now, I mentioned yesterday, as soon as I got this out of the package and it's back again, it's scraping against that metal piece. So yeah, that's frustrating. Maybe there will be some errors like that. And that's usually what has kept SOG behind in the past. You know, sometimes their springs have broken. They've had issues with that and their handles cracking. Yeah, over the years, it's just been several issues where SOG just can't seem to keep up with the quality. But on paper, it actually offers an awful lot to those going camping. It actually has a pretty decent knife blade, has a nice set of pliers, offers a fairly competent tool set. It's got the large ferro rod, and it's got a lot of extras that these other tools don't have. So let me know, what do you think? Which tool would you take with you if you were going camping or even backpacking or hiking? Which one would you choose? Let me know.